Welcome to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals who work with investors, buyers, and sellers of commercial real estate coast to coast. Whether you're an investor, broker, lender, property manager, attorney, or accountant, we're here to learn from the experts.
Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio. We're so glad you joined us. My name is J. Darren Gross. I'm a real estate investor and a commercial property insurance broker. And since my first real estate investment almost 20 years ago, I've just been head over heels in love with real estate. I love everything about it, from the fact that tenants help pay down my mortgage, creating equity for me. Market appreciation helps to create additional equity. The tax benefits of depreciation, and also cash flow. That's just one method or one way to look at real estate. Since then, I've learned all about flips, lending, buying notes, value add. The opportunities are endless, and I continue to learn all the time about additional opportunities. And anyway, that all of this desire to learn and be exposed to all these different opportunities has led me to create this Commercial Real Estate Pro Network and CREPN Radio. And the reason I created this was, again, twofold. One, to learn for my own investment purposes, but also so I could be a better representative to my clients on the insurance side of things. And our goal is basically to have and share in a conversation with experts on topics of interest to commercial real estate professionals and investors. We're here to learn and help. If you like what you hear, and you can find us if you go Google Commercial Real Estate Pro Network, you can find us. We've got a Facebook page, we've got a YouTube page, we've got a LinkedIn group. If you're on LinkedIn and you're involved in real estate, commercial real estate, I can't encourage you enough to request to join the group. And when I say involved in real estate, I mean there's all sorts of tangential businesses that are related that are members of the group. We've got commercial brokers, lenders, investors, accountants, CPAs, contractors, developers. The list goes on. And I encourage you to consider joining the group. There's a lot of great resources in there. We also have a Twitter handle. It's at CRE Pro Network. And more recently, we've got our own website up, commercialrealestatepronetwork.com. And how you can help is, if you do like what you hear, go ahead and like, share, follow, comment. We'd love to hear from you. And let us know what you think of what we're doing. And please feel free to share what you're hearing here in your own network and tell others about us. All right. Now we've got the preliminaries out of the way and you know a little bit about us. It's time to set up today's program. And like always, we try and pick a topic that relates well to commercial real estate investors and just the issues that face real estate investors. And one such topic is earthquakes. In the news here last Saturday, there was a major earthquake in Nepal, measured 7.8 on the Richter scale. And just a few minutes ago, before I dialed in here, checked on the most recent news account, and the death tolls above 5,900, and they're expecting that could reach as high as 10,000. Accounts of climbers being stranded on Mount Everest, avalanches, the smell of rotting flesh, no food, shelter, body scattering. It just goes on. And I think sometimes, as I read this, and I try and picture what would it be like if it happened where I'm at, it's hard to imagine. And so to help us get in and kind of understand, what it might look like and how we can prepare and what we could do when the event happens. The prognosticators are suggesting we're due to have one. We are going to have a conversation. I'm really looking forward to this with our guest today is Allie Ryan. Allie Ryan is the Earth Science Information Officer for the Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral Industries, known as DOGAMI. She leads the agency's efforts to connect Oregonians with information about the state's spectacularly geology as well as geological hazards and can frequently be found speaking at events, organizing outreach, and talking with local communities. She's a former journalist, and she's also the agency's spokesperson. She's been with DOGAMI since 2013, and her personal preparedness challenge is finding room in her tiny 1890s house to store 2 weeks of water for 2 people and her dog. With that, I'd like to say welcome to Allie. Allie, are you there?
I'm here, Darren, and thanks for having me this afternoon. I'm excited to be with you today.
Oh, well, thank you, and I'm so glad you're able to join us. You know, when we set this up here a couple weeks ago, I had no idea that the timeliness of this would be what it is today, given the current events in Nepal, and I thought in the back of my head that it might be something that we could, possibly replay later when something occurred in the news or something like that. But the timing is well, it's good for a topic of interest and stuff, but it's a sobering thought when you see the amount of devastation that's been caused. And I'm sure you've been just a little bit busy, and I appreciate you taking some time to be with us today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. And that's the thing about earthquakes is that scientists study them. We know a lot about where they occur. We know a lot about what areas are seismically active. But you can't never say exactly when it's going to happen, which is why we spend a lot of time talking about, here's what could happen here in Oregon, and really pushing people to be prepared, because you just never know here at home or across the world when an earthquake can hit.
And you mentioned that. I know, a little bit I've read here recently, and I think it was probably more post-tsunami, of the Japanese tsunami that, I guess, I forget it. I think there was actually an earthquake that then created the tsunami in Japan, and then I know there were waves that hit the Oregon coast and caused sizable damage.
Exactly.
I forget if that was down, where was that, Brookings that had or Gold Beach? I can't remember which city that had a significant hit.
I believe it was Brookings.
Brookings. There's ongoing debris that continues to wash up from that. Mm-hmm. How the news continues to play, and it's amazing.
Yeah, those distant tsunamis, those tsunami waves can arrive in Oregon. So when we talk about being ready, that's another piece of the puzzle. But tsunamis, what we talk about most often is a tsunami that would be generated by a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. And the Cascadia subduction zone earthquake is what I spend most of my time talking about, just because, even though earthquakes happen here, we've got dozens of active fault systems, and they have a potential to do a lot of damage depending on how deep the earthquakes happen, how far away from community they happen, other factors like that. But the Cascadia subduction zone earthquake would be the big one. Subduction zones cause the biggest earthquakes in the world, and we have one right off the coast of Oregon. And with that earthquake comes a tsunami. So that really is something to know, to be aware of, no matter where you live in Oregon, that we've got this 600-mile long earthquake fault that stretches, all the way down from British Columbia all along our coast, and it could happen. It's active. We can have a subduction zone earthquake any old time.
Wow. And again, where I was thinking when I started talking there was, what are they able to, or I guess I'm looking for any kind of information, like the hurricanes, they can fly into the middle of them and get the readings on the wind speeds and direction and all that stuff. And I still think it's just bizarre that they fly into the middle of one of these things to determine all that.
I think they'd want to stay away, but that's science for you.
Yeah. Or maybe send a drone in or something like that, but not just a pilot an airplane and go in the middle and take a reading. But having said this, that's a unique opportunity to be able to tell more of the details and project where the damage is going to head, and I guess alert people so they can be properly prepared. Earthquakes are, is there anything? I keep reading that they're working on ways to try and predict and give some sort of warning or some sort of an indication that, hey, look out, here it comes. Is there anything that's in the hops or in the works right now that you're aware of that is more telling or more promising about the ability to predict an earthquake?
We look very much to what has happened in the past. We look to the geologic record and understanding of what the Cascadia threat is better understood every day. So at this point, we look back in the last 10,000 years, which sounds like a lot, but it's nothing in geologic time. And we know that 40 great earthquakes have happened in those past 10,000 years. And based on that understanding and how big those earthquakes have been, scientists say that there's a 10 to 12% chance that we'll have a magnitude 9 plus full break in the next 50 years, and around a 40% chance of a magnitude 8 plus partial break of the Cascadia subduction zone in the next 50 years. So those are, if those were the lottery odds, I think we would all be rushing out right now to buy a ticket. But that the Cascadia subduction zone is active, we only have understood that it was active since the 80s. So what that means for everyday Oregonians and I think real estate folks especially, is that seismic readiness wasn't considered in older buildings and infrastructure. So we have a lot of housing and a lot of places and a lot of roads and a lot of bridges and a lot of other types of infrastructure that was built before code considered this Cascadia threat.
Well, you've sparked a couple of thoughts here I wanted to ask you here. You mentioned a complete break and a partial break.
Yeah.
Are we talking about a new, like a continental plate change, or what are you, when you say a complete break? I'm not familiar with what that means.
Okay, so what's happening now is there's a plate subducting their plates are subducting, which means going underneath. That's a fancy geologic term for going underneath. So the Pacific Ocean floor is actually sliding beneath the adjacent continent, and so but it's not sliding smoothly. It's not if you just slide your hands together smoothly, it's not doing that. It's stuck. And so there is a tremendous amount of pressure building where that plate is stuck. Imagine if you've ever put your shoulder into something heavy like a couch and tried to move it, and just, you're pushing, and it's not going anywhere, and then all of a sudden the force overcomes the friction, and it moves. So it's that sudden movement that creates an earthquake. And so when we talk about a partial break, that sudden movement is happening, it's along only part of that 600-mile long subduction zone, and it would be along the southern end of the subduction zone, so down on the southern Oregon coast, whereas a full break means the whole thing moves at once.
Got it. And you say it would happen down in the southern zone. Is there more pressure identified down there where you'd expect it to be more of a significant break, or is that just a reference point, for example?
Oh no, it would be down there, but that's where, if it was to partially break based on the geologic record, based on what we've seen, it's more likely to partially break down there on the southern end.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, so the bigger earthquake would come with a full break. That's the 9 plus, and then the 8 plus is with that partial break. But still, I mean, even 8+ is still a pretty big earthquake, especially for those folks along the southern coast. That's huge, and that would be felt in many other parts of the state as well.
Well, let's talk just while we're on this, the size of an earthquake kind of thing, 8 versus 9 kind of thing, because this one in Nepal was a 7.8. At least that's what they're saying. And then I know I don't know what the count of the aftershocks have been, but I mean they're significant as well.
Yeah.
What can you describe as to what the expected damage would be at various points, or when you go out and talk in the communities? Do you focus strictly on the Cascadia subduction, the 9+ event? Is that really kind of the one that you guys can point to, say, look, this is what we expect to happen?
I do talk about that an awful lot. And the reason is because if you're ready for a Cascadia earthquake to happen, you're ready for just about anything. It doesn't mean that other kinds of faults don't trigger earthquakes, but it's sort of the worst case, what could possibly happen, ready for anything scenario.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, if you're ready for the big one, then you're ready.
Then you're ready for just about anything. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about the big one. Let's go just straight to the 9.0 based on the full break. What are the Oregon DOGAMI expectations that would, and I assume that Portland would be one of the more focal points of that, just from a standpoint of population size, as far as when you run the scenario as opposed to a smaller community. Is that accurate, or?
Well, a lot of work focuses on the coast. So if you imagine, the subduction zone is right there off the coast, and so Oregon coastal communities are going to be the hardest hit, because there, it's not just the earthquake shaking, it's not just that incredibly strong shaking, it's also the tsunami that's coming, in as little as 15 minutes after the earthquake. So for them, it's those two pieces. It's that 1-2 punch of earthquake, then tsunami. And so we have spent many years, and our scientists are always working to, understand what that tsunami inundation will look like, and then take that scientific information and use it to create products that coastal communities and Oregon visitors to coastal communities can use. So it's inundation maps, how far inland will the tsunami come, and then it's also evacuation brochures, how far inland do you need to go to get out of the tsunami zone, what's the evacuation route. We work with the local communities to develop the best routes to get out of that inundation zone, and then identifying assembly areas where will people meet. And then along with that, just raising awareness of, hey, this earthquake is going to happen at some point in our lives, or it could happen at any time. A tsunami is going to come along with it, and helping communities and individuals get prepared for that to happen on the coast. But it's not something that is exclusive to the coast. The Willamette Valley is going to feel some really strong shaking. It's going to knock out services like electric and water and other roads, from the Willamette Valley west. And then, of course, the rest of the state they're going to be the helpers, right? Even if the shaking isn't as strong, all the communities that have been impacted are going to need some help from other parts of the state as we start to recover. So, yeah, I mean, so many communities are at risk from this, but a lot of our work does focus on the coast.
Well, and that clearly makes sense if that's where the epicenter, is going to be and where the expected damage. I know when I've been to the coast, you see all the tsunami warning signs and where to go.
Yeah.
The drill kind of fun stuff. Can you paint kind of a picture as to what you a doomsday? I don't mean doomsday, but the 9.0 hits. What you expect? I understand, trying to educate the population, but are there models that say how big the wave would be, or how I mean, would there be any buildings standing, or would it? Because you say the 80s. It's interesting. I know in insurance, it's. I didn't realize. I just figured that the building codes had been kind of a standard thing for a long time, but it wasn't until I think
so
it was.
In the 80s was when science kind of started to come along and say, hey, this is an active subduction zone, but then the building codes, that wasn't until the 90s that those were updated. And so, I mean, just like looking at Portland alone. We've done some looking, and I think it's a really small, like just looking at Multnomah County, there's only maybe 8% of residences that were built after 1980. Most of the housing stock was built before then, so it's a lot of homes built before anybody had any idea that a Cascadia subduction or earthquake was even a possibility.
That's amazing that I mean, it's so recent that the codes have changed and the awareness. I would not have thought that had you asked me. I would have failed miserably if I had to take that.
If it was a quiz.
Yeah. So, but getting back to try and paint a picture, do you have any kind of a sense of? I mean, and this is kind of where I'm going. When I see these pictures on TV that Nepal, and I see these essentially just piles of brick rubble, and these people digging brick by brick, by brick by brick, and they're still pulling people out alive. I think today. I just saw there were 2 more people pulled out. I mean, it's just amazing to me. I can't imagine 5 days under a pile of rubble.
Really scary. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. So, but the construction here is, I'm going to say, it's more frame built. I'm guessing, wood snaps, breaks, buildings fall down.
Mm-hmm.
Can you paint
unreinforced masonry buildings? Yeah. So just in terms of like the shaking itself, I'm from the coast, obviously, like very heavy shaking, buildings destroyed, heavy damages to structure, even well-built structures. We would not expect a lot of structures to be inhabitable after a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake and tsunami, and then as you sort of move across the state from the coast, in Portland, you're getting into, the experience of it's shaking really hard. It's hard to stand. It's hard to walk. Your furniture is broken. It's moved. Windows are broken. Buildings are damaged. Things are falling off buildings. You are definitely seeing impacts. A lot of buildings won't be inhabitable. The difference is the tsunami, really. And so when we talk about, it's the thing is, one, like, what's the experience going to feel like? What's the what's the expected intensity, what's the damage potential. We look at those pieces, but then we also look at, how long is it going to be until services are restored. And so the Oregon Resilience Plan, I don't know, you are probably not familiar with the Oregon Resilience Plan, but let me tell you just a little bit about it.
Please share.
So the State Resilience Plan recommends ways to be prepared, and so for the state to get prepared. This is the state's long-term look at what do we need to do to be resilient, what do we need to do to bounce back after an earthquake. And so that plan, which was which was created over many months with input from hundreds of people, by people who are experts in all the different things you want to think about when you're thinking about how will we come back from an earthquake. So experts in energy, experts in water systems, experts in transportation, our own earthquake experts, tsunami experts, everybody coming together to look at what are going to be the impacts and what we should do about it. So as you move across the state, you're looking at some really potentially devastating impacts. And let me see if I can find. Where's my thing? There's a great table in that report, which is a very large report and very, very in depth.
Well, just seeing the pictures and stuff, and again the Nepal pictures that are of mind. Just the volume of debris in the streets.
Oh yeah.
And just the impassable roadways, and and then I was thinking about this the other night when I was getting ready for or kind of trying to prepare for this. You think back to like 9/11 and New York City and the chaos in all of that, and how these these buildings were coming down, and how even the emergency response vehicles, the things you would normally think of to go, well, let's just drive to the fire and put the fire out. Well, the fire department fell down on the fire trucks, or whatever it is that they're not usable, or they've been destroyed. And when you start to play that out in your mind, and you start to realize, oh, wait a minute, we might need a bigger plan from people from farther away to come help.
Exactly. And, when we think about how long is it going to be before the things that we're used to are restored. So like electricity, the estimated time in the Oregon Resilience Plan to restore service in the valley, it could be anywhere from a month to 3 months. On the coast, it's 3 to 6 months. Now, if you think about all the things that you depend on for electricity, like your heat, we take for granted that when we flick a switch in our house, the light's going to work, the stove's going to work, the heat's going to work. Not always the case. Same thing with basics like drinking water and sewer. In the valley, it could be anywhere from a month to a year. That's a long time to be without those basic services. And even though, that's the infrastructure getting back up, that doesn't mean without any kind of stopgap measures for that long. But that's a year without, being able to turn on your tap and have the really good drinking water that we've all come to depend on being available. Like, that would be completely, it's just a different way of life. And even when it happens for a brief period of time, like if we have a boil water notice or something in Portland, you notice not being able to do those everyday things. So it's, just understanding of how it's going to be different and how we can get ready for it to be different.
Well, when you say anything from a month to a year,
it's a long range, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I was asking the question, I said, well, a couple of weeks, you get your water back online, but I guess when you think about it, if the infrastructure is all broke apart, or the supply lines or whatever, and just the intensity of the demand for labor and to build it all back, it makes sense. But it's just I don't think that most of us that are going through our day-to-day routine, go to work, kids come home, whatever that is, that just doesn't enter into the picture. You just don't say, oh, and by the way, when this happens, we'll just have to figure it out. And like I said, even like a boil option, that if you don't have water, you don't have anything to boil, right? But then electricity, you mentioned just being able to flip the switch. I just don't think that most of us, and I'll put myself at the front of the line, are able to really fully comprehend what that would be like.
Oh, yeah, and I'm not either, and it's really hard to wrap your head around. It's really hard to wrap your head around, and, it's scary. And getting ready, like just wrapping your head around, how do I get ready for something that catastrophic is super scary, and your mind automatically goes to the worst place. And what we don't want people to do is just get overwhelmed by, what could happen, and make getting prepared so hard for themselves, or something that they're so worried about that they don't do anything at all. Not doing anything at all is the worst thing that you could do. So it's really about doing what you can, but do something.
Right. Hey, before we talk about what you can do, let's talk a little bit about the resources in the event of the. So let's just say the event happened. It happened Saturday, like it did in Nepal.
Yeah.
You've got. I mean, I think of some of the, and I'm always amazed at how quick to judge response, et cetera, we are. And I don't know if it's just the press, or I think everybody expects it to work differently than it does when you have the event. I mean, I think of Katrina and this expectation of an orderly, event to chaos.
Right.
But the reality is chaos, and that's why it's called chaos, because it's not something you may have read about it, but until you're in it, you don't know exactly how it's going to play out. And if everything you've planned for and your response has been, to go left, and left is not available, you didn't consider right, or whatever that looks like. And so I'm just kind of, before we go into the what we can do ahead of time, I wanted to kind of touch base on a little bit of what are some of the agencies and the, response, I guess, first responders or whatever. I mean, I always think of FEMA, just based on, they've been one of the ones that shows up, but, Red Cross, FEMA. Can you speak to that a little bit as far as what one would?
So the good news is that everybody now gets, there are a lot of organizations who now completely get that a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake will happen in Oregon. And so you have people at the federal level, FEMA is a great example, who are working with state governments, our state government here in Oregon, state government in Washington, because keep in mind this isn't just an Oregon problem, it's a very much a Oregon, Washington, Vancouver, BC problem. So working with us as the State Department of Geology and Mineral Industries for to increase scientific knowledge, to increase understanding, to increase the resources that Oregonians have available. Then, the State Office of Emergency Management, doing so much to plan and prepare and get the state ready to respond. Same thing up in Washington. And then, of course, you've got, county emergency managers, city emergency managers. There is a big network of people statewide working to get ready. We're all hoping that a Cascadia subduction earthquake does not happen tomorrow. We're hoping for, if we could get a couple hundred years to get the state ready, that would be great. But the resilience plan really, it identified, here's what we're looking at, here are ways we could get ready, and here is how we're preparing on a statewide, a community, and personal levels. So yeah, we'll get there, but not quite there yet, which is why it's really important for individuals to be prepared to, be on their own and be able to have what they need for them and their family to get by, not to expect life to be exactly the same, but to prepare for being, on their own as a family, but also, within their community, and thinking about community-wide resources as well. But just know that it's going to be a little while before support may be forthcoming, and could be a great while before things return to what we think of as regular.
Yeah, no, you've already established the power and the water timeline there, which has kind of made me rethink a couple things. Just looking down here, some of my notes and thoughts. I'm still just trying to wrap my just the sheer size of the event and the cost to rebuild, et cetera. Pretty amazing. But let's jump into a little bit of the preparedness.
Yeah.
What are some things, and what do you, if you're talking to a group, here's the audience. What and here's kind of, this is something that I think is kind of where I'm thinking my brain goes to. So let's say I'm a landlord and I've got a couple hundred tenants, and some sort of a reminder to them that, hey, look, if this happens, you need to be prepared, without going full bunker mentality of,
right.
Everybody's got to have. What are some ways that landlords can educate and communicate to their tenants in ways, and just the community in general, to be prepared to wait out the relief or help or state of normalcy.
Yeah. So three big things. Make a plan, make a kit, and get your house earthquake ready. Again, do what you can, but do something. So making a plan can be as simple as talking with your family about where are we going to meet up after this happens. If we're all apart, if I'm at work and the kids are at school, and my partner is at their work and we're all separated by miles, where are we going to meet up? How are we going to get there? What are we going to do? Who are we going to call out of town, or who are going to text out of town to let them know that we're okay? If we have to evacuate, where are we going to go? Those kinds of things. So that's as simple as just talking about it beforehand, having that conversation. So make a plan. That is one great way that tenants can be prepared. Make a kit. The other big piece, it's what stuff do you need after stuff isn't available anymore. And I always say, start a kit. Like that can be, add piece by piece. You can start small, aim for 72 hours, and then add. We know here in Oregon that is probably, in a lot of places, 72 hours is not going to get you where you need to go, but it's daunting, and it's also getting supplies for 2 weeks of water, food, first aid, sanitary supplies, medicine. Like that costs money, and people have other things that they're worrying about in their day-to-day life. I've got bills, you've got bills, so start small, piece by piece, and just add to it as you can. That's another really important piece. Just landlords can let their tenants know that making a plan, making a kit, key pieces, and then the get your house earthquake ready piece. Some of that is what can tenants do. It's looking around the house and thinking, okay, if this room was shaking really hard right now, what would break, what would fall down, what would move, and taking steps to do things like securing the water heater to the wall, making sure pictures are hung very well, not having heavy pictures hanging over places where you are a lot, like the bed or the couch, knowing where you can drop, cover, and hold on in any room is a great thing to know. Just it's really, the earth starts shaking unexpectedly, you'll want to have a game plan in mind. So having practice dropping, covering, holding on, and knowing where you're going to do it, that's all great. Knowing how to turn things off. So how do you turn the gas off? How do you turn the electric off? How do you turn the water off? And then, the property owner piece is, how can you strengthen your properties? What can you do to retrofit the places where you do have tenants living? And Darren, I think you mentioned it earlier, there's a lot of wood frame construction here, especially for homes, and those tend to do pretty well. The problem is that if they're not attached to their foundations, then you have a problem. So attaching your lovely wood-framed home to its foundation is a good thing. But those are all things that, if you break them up, there are great checklists. Red Cross has awesome checklists, just for a week by week, a few things at a time. What can you do to get ready, to make your plan, make your kit, and get your house ready? Just breaking it down so it doesn't feel like all this stuff you have to do all at once, but that you're doing something, and then over time, that piece by piece you become ready.
No, definitely the piece by piece thing. I think that's a great idea. It is funny. I still have a hard time believing that the house is just set upon the foundation and that there was not some sort of a connecting piece that that your house could shake off its foundation.
Yeah.
But that's what happens.
I know. Every time I'm in the basement of that 1898 house we got, I think, because we haven't done any retrofitting at our house, and it's I'm not quite sure how it would do. It's doing pretty good for houses built in 1898, but if the earth started moving, we might have some problems.
Yeah, you might want to get out of the basement.
Yeah.
I know our home is 1928. I think is the addition there, and I don't like to go down there much. I've always been frustrated by, I want to say in the Oregonian, periodically there's been this picture of Portland, and it's kind of like a colored map that shows where the, how bad the earthquake would quake or shake or whatever in Portland. And for whatever reason, my home is always just outside of the picture, leaving me to wonder like, oh my God, it's so bad that it won't be.
Yeah, no, I'm going to tell you something that's going to be so useful for you. So we've got this tool called HasView. It's an interactive map. You can plug in your address and see geohazards in your neighborhood. Most everything that we have mapped, everything we know about not just earthquakes, but about landslides and flooding and, much of the geohazards that we have mapped is there on HasView. And you can just plug in your address and then turn on the earthquake layer, and you can see what the expected shaking is. There's no edge of the map with that, so that is an incredibly good tool for anybody anywhere in Oregon to check out all these different kinds of geohazards, which is a really important thing when you're planning, knowing what the context is for your house or where you work or the buildings you own are. It's great to be able to do that.
Sure. Do you know, is there an equivalent for other states or any kind of a national reference point for people to dial up and see what their property looks like?
Yeah. Some states do, some states don't. It's probably just best to Google hazard viewer and then whatever your state is, and it should pop right up if one exists.
Hazard viewer.
Yeah, I would. Ours is called HasView. It might be called something else in other states, but for non-Oregon listeners, HasView or Hazards Viewer, Natural Hazards Map, and see what pops up.
Got it. No, I've seen the one for Oregon, and it's quite telling. And like you said, with the landslides, and it looks like the one I've seen has all the fault lines mapped out.
Yeah.
And I know that some of my underwriters have resorted to using this as well, which has made them less willing to write earthquake insurance in many cases, just based on the old building on the fault line, no thanks. And that leads back to, like you said, the retrofitting opportunities. Yeah. Let me ask you about that as far as retrofitting. Is there any kind of, I know there's contractors that do this, and I'm familiar with a couple. Is there any kind of, grants or anything that you're aware of that would provide incentive or assistance in paying for such an event or some way to prevent disaster for property owners? Are you aware of anything like that? Is there any?
Yeah, so it's best to check. I would encourage people to check with their city or their county emergency management offices to see what they know about it. But I know here in Portland, the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management did a pilot project that was designed to, do just that. I'm not sure exactly what the detail of incentive was, but it was for homeowners who are interested in making their homes more seismically resilient. Details on that. I would check out the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management, but any community that you're in, your local emergency management folks should be able to connect you with opportunities. I think here in Oregon, as we're thinking about becoming more resilient, those kinds of opportunities are starting to emerge. There's a seismic grant program for schools and emergency facilities right now, that exists right now, that many school retrofit projects have been done through. And there are also things emerging all the time that acknowledge that this is something that's really important to prepare for, and it's also something that resources are needed for. So checking with local folks is a great idea.
That's great. Hey, another thing, I just was looking down my list of things I wanted to ask you. Like with smoke detectors, I think every time you go to change the clocks forward or back, there's always kind of a reminder. And by the way, check your battery and your smoke detector. Is there any annual anniversary or a date that we can reference for thinking about earthquake preparedness? Is there anything like that
Yeah.
exists?
I'm so glad that you asked. There is an annual event called the Great Shakeout. It is an opportunity for everybody to take a few minutes and do practice drop cover and holding on, or to organize an earthquake drill. So here in Oregon, that event happens every year in October. And this October, it's October 15th at 10:15 a.m. And I would encourage everybody to participate. I mean, it can just be you participating by drop covering and holding on. That is something that it's important to practice, because the earth shaking, totally new situation. You're going to do what you've practiced, and you want your mind to go immediately to drop, cover, and hold on, and you want your body to be used to that movement. And so practicing it is a great way to do that. For property owners, if you can encourage your tenants to hold an earthquake drill that day, it's a great way to just encourage your folks to first of all be aware of the fact that earthquakes happen here in Oregon and happen in so many other places across the world, and to take the time to do something, and hopefully it'll spark a little bit of that, getting readiness, starting to get prepared. That is a terrific way to have everybody do it all together.
That's great. So 10:15 at 10:15, right? That's the
exactly. That's the Great Oregon Shakeout.
Is that, and that's Oregon exclusive? It's not doesn't coincide with other states, or is there anybody else, or is it just state by state?
No, it's nationwide. Not everybody does theirs on the same day, but a ton of people do.
So 10:15 is that day, is what I was trying to get at, though. That's
10:15 that's the day.
Okay, got it. And another just kind of a thought thing. The stop, was it stop, drop, or drop and hold on?
That's fire.
Drop, cover,
that's
and hold
a good
on,
one to know.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good one to know too.
On. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's drop, cover, and hold on. And that is, that's really a key piece to know. When the earth starts shaking, you gotta do that. Just because, people are hurt often when they're trying to move around when an earthquake's happening. But you do not want to be moving around, trying to run to a different room, trying to run outside while things are flying off the shelves. While stuff is coming down. You want to protect yourself first, and then, when the earth stops shaking, take that opportunity to evacuate, get outside, get to clear ground. If you're on the coast, the second the earth stops shaking, you want to head inland to using an evacuation route that you've hopefully practiced in advance to get to high ground.
Yeah, no kidding. Don't wait around for the wave to come in. Let me ask you, and then we've just got just a couple of minutes here, but I wanted to. I've been in one earthquake that I know of. I remember I was sitting at my desk, and the monitor started dancing around on the desk, and immediately everybody jumped up, and we went and stood in the doorway. I don't know if that was. Is that still a? Was I doing it right, or was I running to the fire?
Well, you were doing it. You weren't doing it right. You didn't know any better, though. And that goes back to, like you would, see historic photos of the whole building had fallen down except for the doorway. And so for a long time, people thought that, okay, like the doorway, it's the strongest part of the building, right? But the challenge with the doorway is that the doorway, there's a door in it, and so if you're standing there and everything's shaking, where's the door going to go? Is it standing still, or is it swinging shut on you? The other thing is that a doorway is a one person fit. There's only room for one person in a doorway, and so when you're drop covering and holding on, under your family dining room table, you guys can all get down. And next best thing, it's just if you're not next to something that you can drop cover and hold on under, best to just get down next to an interior wall, and still you're covering and you're covering your head just to protect it from falling objects, debris, that kind of thing.
All right, so drop, cover, and hold on. That's the motto for the earthquake preparedness, and that national, or the date that celebrated here in October or in Oregon and other points is October 15th at 10:15 a.m. I will mark it down on my calendar.
You got it. Yep.
Before we totally close out here, can you give the website address for? I know you guys have some information on there. If listeners are interested in it, and that HasView. HasView. What's the website?
Yep, there are a couple ways to get to it. So if you go to OregonGeology.org, that is our main website, and you will find it. There. It's just right under. It's right under Maps and Publications.
Got it. Well, this has been a ton of great information, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this, Allie. And hope that we can do this again. Hopefully there's not any event where we're having to call on you because of an Oregon or a Cascadia subduction zone event. But grateful to have the information, be able to prepare for any earthquake event. So I want to say thanks again for taking your time, and I know our listeners will be better for having heard this. So thanks, Allie.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
All right, great. You got it.
Bye-bye.
All right. For our listeners, I want to remind you can find this Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. We're on Facebook, YouTube. Can't say it enough. If you're on LinkedIn, go ahead and ask to join our group, Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. Also, look for us on Twitter at CRE Pro Network, and our website, commercialrealestatepronetwork.com. And please spread the word, like, follow, share, comment. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network and CREPN Radio.
You're listening to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals. For more information on this or any of our guests, like us on Facebook, CREPN Radio.